Hello, this is Karen Dudek-Brannan from Dr. Karen Speech and Language, and I wanted to offer my sincere thanks for checking out my video. I'm so honored to have you here, and I'm glad you're taking advantage of this video training. This definitely shows your dedication to the field and being the best clinician you can be. Now, I know you're super busy because I'm an SLP too, so let me help you decide if this video training is a good use of your time so you can decide if you should keep watching. If you're an SLP who treats students with language disorders, you're definitely in the right place. This applies whether you're working in the school systems or working in another setting, because our goal is always the same, to help students function in their day-to-day life. And a large portion of that time for a child is when they're at school. Now, if you're treating tons of students with language disorders and you feel like you have about 10 million skills you need to teach them in order to catch them up, and absolutely no time to get to them all, this video will be super helpful to you. As I said, one of our main jobs with school-age children is making sure that these students succeed in their academic careers. And we know for children with language disorders, they may be totally bombing. So if you have students who are absolutely drowning academically and just can't keep up, but you feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start in helping them, I'm so glad you're here because what I'm going to share with you will help you immensely. Now we know that some of our students have severe to profound issues, and they'll be on our caseloads for the long haul, and we do our best to improve their skills. But then there are those students who have potential to do without us if we just gave them the right intervention. The problem is that many of those students seem to plateau or sit on that cusp for a long time, and sometimes it feels like we're just stuck in the same place. And we know that the reason some of these students are referred to us in the first place is because we're supposed to fix that problem. And when we don't, we feel like we've failed. So if you think you should be able to fix more of your students' issues and actually get them off your caseload, but feel like you're falling short, this video will really help you out. Last, I bet if you have the previous 3 problems, you end up feeling pretty bad when your students are struggling because you feel responsible for helping them. So you're probably busting your ass trying to search for the best possible activities you can do for them. And you're probably cramming as many things as you can into the limited direct therapy time you have with your kids. So that means when you walk into work each day, it's like a nonstop sprint from one student to another all day long. Sometimes we even have to have an intricate plan to make sure we actually have bathroom breaks or time to shove food down our throat around lunchtime. And we do this all because we want to make every single second of the day count when we're with our clients and students. Yet sometimes even when we do this, there are still kids who aren't getting better. And this just adds to the frustration and burnout. So if any of this sounds familiar, you're going to want to stick around for the rest of this training. You're absolutely in the right place because I felt like this too. I've been an SLP since 2004, and when I first started practicing, I thought there was no way I was ever going to work in a school because I absolutely hated dealing with language issues. I just wanted to go into a setting and treat cases where the protocols were clear-cut and cookie-cutter. So when I graduated and started interviewing, the school job was my backup plan. But I got an offer for a school position, which was the best option geographically, so I took a job in the schools thinking I'd bail at the soonest possible opportunity. When I first started the job, I hated never knowing the right place to start when I got language referrals. And I hated the fact that language was so messy and complicated. And sometimes I just wanted to pull my hair out. I felt scattered and overwhelmed and spent way too much time searching for materials and prepping for language sessions. But even though I thought my days in the school systems were numbered, an interesting turn of events changed my mind. You see, when I started really paying attention to the evaluations I was doing, I started to notice there was a clear pattern in almost all of the language referrals I was getting. It seemed like the majority of the kids who struggled in school did for the same reason, which I'll get to in a minute. But the important part for me was that once I started to understand the problem, I was able to see the solution. And I became obsessed with nailing it down and executing it. What I found was that many of these students had very weak vocabulary skills. And it wasn't just that they were coming out low on formal language evaluations. It was the things that teachers were telling me as well. So they'd tell me that beyond just naming and identifying words, many of these kids had no idea how to recognize a word when they saw it in written form, or they couldn't remember how to spell it, or had a hard time using grade level vocabulary with the right grammar and syntax. And this ended up impacting them across the board in school. So, when I started my doctorate in special education back in 2006, I made vocabulary and language intervention my area of specialty, and I did a ton of research in the area. I published my own studies on the topic and experimented with tons of different techniques with my own students because I was working full time as an SLP the entire time I was completing my doctorate. So, what I found was that vocabulary skills have a significant impact on reading comprehension. So much, in fact, that if we don't know enough of the words we're reading, it won't make any sense to us. I also found when I was researching that these kids with delayed vocabulary tend to have very weak metalinguistic awareness, which means that they aren't meta about how they learn words and don't really know how to problem solve when they come to difficult terminology. So they don't learn as efficiently as typically developing students. I also learned that vocabulary skills are predictive and are correlated with overall academic performance. And this has consistently been proven across the research. So all of this started to make sense. And I started to understand why my students were struggling so much. And here's where I started to figure out where I needed to focus to fix the problem. I knew that I needed to hit vocabulary and metalinguistic awareness with these students if I was going to help them. So I thought that there must be some published program somewhere that integrated all of the necessary components, so I made it my mission to find it. And even though I found a lot of good materials, none of the published tools I found had everything I needed. So I created my own system that I used for all my language cases, especially those milder cases who had to learn to function in the general education setting for most of their day. And I figured out that when I integrated 5 different components into my treatment to really target vocabulary with those mild cases that were just sitting on my caseload, not getting better, I started to see some of these students go from having legitimate language delays to having scores well within the average range. And I want to share these 5 essential components with you today, but first there's something else I need you to do. This part is really important because it may completely change the way you do your job. So right now, I want to invite you to take off your speech therapist's hat for a minute, and this is why. As SLPs, we wear our hearts on our sleeves, we love our students, and we get emotionally attached to what we're doing. But I'm about to bring some clarity by sharing some cold, hard facts. The fact is that we have huge caseloads, a finite amount of time to see all of our students, and we get spread very thin trying to give each of them 100% of our time and energy. We do this because we care so much, and that's just in our blood. But the reality is that we can't be going full throttle all the time. If we do, we become less effective because we wear ourselves down. So stop being a therapist for a minute, and I want you to pretend you're an accountant or a financial planner. These are the people who look at the facts and figures and give you the honest truth using objective measures. And these are the people we go to if we want to get out of debt. As SLPs, we are sometimes like those people. When people are in debt, they have multiple loans that they need to pay off, and many times they're frantically trying to pay a little to this loan, a little to that loan, and they stay in debt because they never really hammer one away so it's off their plate completely. So, what would your accountant or financial planner tell you to do if you were in this situation? Well, first, they would probably give you some type of structured, organized system you could follow that would automate things for you so you could execute it without having to make tons of decisions or use a lot of cognitive resources. Second, they'd tell you to take on one loan at a time, work really hard on paying it off until it's done while making just the minimum payments on everything else. So over time, you end up getting rid of some of your smaller pieces of debt completely because you focus intently on them. This ultimately frees up resources because it gets things off your plate. Now I want you to start thinking like your accountant. I don't mean this in a negative way, but I want you to think of each of your students as one of those loans. Not in the sense that they drain you, but just in the sense that you have to devote time and resources to them. So when you think of this analogy, I want you to focus on those mild to moderate language cases who have the potential to function with minimal to no special education support if they got the right intervention. I'm not talking about those kids who are in it for the long haul because they're severe to profound. So what happens to many of us as SLPs is that we try to go above and beyond for all of our students at once, and we end up not giving our best to any of them because we're spread too thin. This gets to be an issue for those students who have potential to be dismissed because we never devote enough time and resources to get them to that point. When actuality, if we took the time to learn a good system for treating those students, we could nip some of these cases in the bud. So what we really want to do is first learn a system. So we need a structured protocol or a curriculum for language therapy that we can seamlessly execute. I'm asking you to devote some time up front to learning this process so you can save time in the long run. So for now, you're just going to take a little extra time to focus on those milder cases until you learn this process. I'm not asking you to cut corners with your other kids. Of course, you'll still be seeing them in the meantime, but we're just taking some time to really focus on the mild cases. So once you take the time to put this system in place, it'll start to work for you. So eventually, once you have this process down, you'll start to see some of your students get better because you're giving them what they need. You'll essentially work yourself out of a job, which is exciting because it means what you're doing is working, which is what we want in the first place. So you're probably wondering what the system is. So as I mentioned before, vocabulary seemed to be the major issue in most of my referrals, but it went beyond just naming and identification, which is what's commonly what we might measure in a lot of our formal assessment tools. So what I found when I dug into the research is that we can actually hit most of the common areas of struggle for students with language disorders if we use vocabulary as a starting point because word knowledge is integrated with the other components of language that are commonly a struggle for our students. And the system, in a nutshell, is to focus on these 5 things with the understanding that they all tie back to vocabulary. So here they are. Number 1, phonology. We need to have a representation of how words sound in order to use them effectively. Number 2, orthography. Part of knowing a word is knowing how it looks in print, which is why vocabulary and reading are so intertwined. Number 3, morphology. When we truly know a word, we know how to use it with different morphemes like prefixes, suffixes, and grammatical markers. Number 4, syntax. We need to know how to use words in different types of sentences. I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your heads right now because you have tons of students who have terrible grammar and syntax, both in written and oral language. So, last, number 5 is semantics, which is the meat of word meanings, which helps us categorize words and understand word relationships. So these 5 things account for the majority of those academic language issues. So if we focus on integrating these things into our therapy, this can function for us similarly to how a curriculum functions for teachers. Because if we make sure to hit all these elements, we've covered most of our bases. The bottom line is that it is possible to help some of our students succeed, whether that be cutting back on the therapy they get or getting them to be able to function without extra help. It is possible to successfully remediate some of these language disorders if we focus on the right things, and I want to show you how. Now, I know hitting these 5 elements works because I've seen it happen with my own eyes, and that's why I've packaged that same system into a course that will show you exactly how to create and implement your own language therapy curriculum to get amazing results. It's called Language Therapy Advance, and it's designed especially for SLPs who treat tons of students with mild to moderate language disorders. From now until the end of September 2016, I'm offering Language Therapy Advance for 75% off of the full price as a back to school gift to my fellow SLPs. You can join now by clicking the button below to register and get this special offer. Now, I know that when you get really frustrated with your job, it's easy to feel like you'll never be able to fix your students' issues. And I felt like that too when I initially started reading the research and studies that showed these amazing outcomes. And I thought, oh, that's great. It worked for them, but they must be way better than I am, or have smaller caseloads, better materials, or have access to something I don't. But I tried the techniques anyways and really took that leap of faith to see if those type of systems worked. And I want to tell you about one of those early cases I had when I was putting all of this together and developing my program. So this student was called Jay, and Jay was referred to me when he was in second grade. And he'd been struggling with reading for some time, and by the time I got the referral, he was about a year behind his class in reading. But he was tested and he didn't meet criteria for a specific learning disability. So my evaluation showed that he was about 1.5 standard deviations where he should be in expressive language. And I gave him the language processing test third edition. So he had to do things like name word associations, list items in categories, and explain meanings of words. So, like most of my referrals, I found that one of the major issues was vocabulary. So, let me tell you a little bit about what I did with Jay. So, first of all, I knew he had poor phonological awareness skills, and I thought that this might be related to some of his vocabulary issues. So, whenever I was targeting specific words in therapy, I made sure that Jay knew how to pronounce the words and was really paying attention to how words sounded. I also knew that reading was a struggle, so I drew attention to the way words looked in print and gave Jay some specific instruction on different phonics skills that actually impacted word meanings. I also worked on syntactic structure. So I addressed syntax specifically when we were working on word definitions by showing him the way that you put your sentence together to actually explain what a word means, and then gave him a lot of practice just using those words in context. I also emphasize semantic information, so categorization, and then other features that help us to explain what words mean and help us to categorize words in our mind. And then last, of course, I gave him a lot of practice using words in different forms, such as with different grammatical markers. And I found that when I hit these 5 areas together, and I was very meta and explicit with Jay, that he actually started to generalize some of these skills outside of speech therapy time. So by sixth grade, when I reevaluated Jay, the status had changed significantly. So he went from being about a year behind his peers in reading to passing all of his grade level reading tests. And on my evaluation, so in the area of expressive and receptive language skills, he went to mild to moderate delays to all within the average range from the work that we had done. And he was able to go to middle school without any special education support. And this was a huge moment for me because up until this point, whenever I had discontinued a language case, it was because the student had plateaued. And I always just felt like I was giving up. But this time, we were discontinuing a student because they were better. And this was a huge breakthrough for me. And since then, once I realized that this system worked so well, I've used it with countless other cases. So now I want to take the time to show you how I did it. That's why I'm offering my new course to you called Language Therapy Advanced so that I can show you this system. This is perfect for students in elementary through middle school when the students are in those key academic years and they're really learning to read and write, but they don't quite have the language skills to make things click. This course is also perfect for you if you have a lot of students who are struggling with grammar, syntax, vocabulary, and reading, and they just seem to have language issues that are impacting them across the board academically. It's also perfect for you if you have those milder students who don't qualify for other services, and maybe you're the only one providing them any extra support, but they're really, really struggling and you're just not quite sure how to make things click with them. This course is also helpful if you just feel like you have too many skills to hit in your therapy and not enough time to get to them all. It'll really help you focus on the right things so that you can make the biggest impact possible. And last, if you just don't feel like you have enough time to go searching through scholarly articles and reading research, and you just want to know what works and what is research based, this course will be extremely helpful to you. Here's what you'll get when you join Language Therapy Advance. So the course is all online, which means you can easily access the materials 24/7 whenever it's convenient to you. And once you join, you'll have lifetime access, so you can review it as many times as you want. It includes 3 modules, and they each have 3 lessons, so that's a total of 9 video trainings, plus tons of worksheets and therapy materials you can easily use right away without having to do elaborate planning or gathering a bunch of other materials. You'll also get email support from me once you've joined. I want this to be the best experience possible, so I'll be there for you to answer your questions about the course content. Each and every one of these learning tools is designed to teach you this system so you can put it in place and start getting some of those students off your caseload who have the potential to function without you, and for the rest of your students, just to help them be the best that they can be. This special offer is my back to school gift so you can have the opportunity to learn this system, and I can't wait to share it with you. All you need to do is click the button at the bottom of the video to get exclusive access to this proven system. Now, you're probably wondering what this costs. Normally, the cost of the course is either 4 payments of $59.99 or 1 payment of $199.99. However, as a gift to all the hardworking SLPs, I'm offering this course for 75% off the original price until September 2016 so that you can get ready for the school year. So that means instead of making 4 payments, the entire course can be yours for 1 payment of $59.99. Now, I'm not able to offer this deal forever, so that's why the cost is going back after September. So it's important to act now and take advantage of this opportunity while it still lasts. The course comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee, so there's literally no risk to you to sign up today. I'm willing to do this for you because it would mean so much to me to see you help your students succeed. And if I can help you get some of those more capable students off your caseload or make a breakthrough with some of those tricky cases that keep you up at night, I'd consider that a huge win for everyone. The bottom line is that you have a choice. You can continue to feel scattered or jump around from skill to skill without seeing results. You can keep doing things that aren't helping the skill stick with your students, and you can keep using your free time trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with a language therapy system on your own. Or you can choose to sign up for Language Therapy Advance and invest the time upfront that will save you time in the long run. You can learn exactly what language skills your students need and how to teach those essential skills with methods that work. And you can learn how to get some of those more capable students off your caseload so you have more time for other things. And you can walk away with a set of staple therapy activities you can use over and over in different ways. All this so you can effectively work yourself out of a job and help your students reach their full potential because you're spending your time doing the right things. All you need to do to join is click the link below and you'll be taken to a registration page where you can sign up. After that, you'll be prompted with instructions for registering and getting access to the course materials. And you'll be able to view the course and start learning the system. I hope you'll join me today for Language Therapy Advance to take advantage of this limited time offer. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you inside the Language Therapy Advance members area.